What is family mobbing and how does this relate to family scapegoating abuse? That's what I'll be talking about in today's episode of Family Scapegoating Abuse, so stick around. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Rebecca Mandeville, licensed psychotherapist, family scapegoating abuse expert, and the author of Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed: Help and Hope for Adults in the Family Scapegoat Role. Today I'm going to be talking about family mobbing. Before I do that, I want to emphasize once again that family scapegoating abuse is systemic in nature. It's driven by systemic processes. Even if it just appears only one person is behind those scapegoating behaviors that you may have been a target of if you're here watching this video. Family mobbing is also systemic, and you actually may have experienced family mobbing and didn't even know it. So I want to define it for you today. And I'll start off first by saying where we even got the term, because I think it's important to cite and attribute the work of others. In this case, family mobbing is a term that spun off from the term workplace mobbing, and that came from the research of Dr. Heinz Lehman, Leymann. And if you want to know more about his work on workplace mobbing, that form of systemic mobbing, you can look up his research and see what he had to say about it. This is why it's always good to give proper attribution, which frankly I don't see going on enough in the media circles I'm involved with, because this gives people the freedom to go to the source. So some of the behaviors that you associate with family scapegoating abuse, at times with narcissistic abuse, gaslighting, reality distortion, harassment, cyberbullying, feeling left out of the family, being covertly pushed away from the hub of the family, or being overtly pushed out of the family. As I said in a video a while back, what the dysfunctional family cannot control or understand, it will eject and reject. So some of you may have been ejected from your family, or you may have ejected yourself if it became unbearable because of the FSA dynamics you were experiencing. A good example, a painful example of family mobbing from one of my past videos. Honestly, I'm shocked by how often this comes up with not just my clients, but in all the research I've done on FSA. Going to a funeral, typically a parent's funeral, and literally being attacked by siblings, sometimes by a parent. Horrible things said to you, accusations made. It's devastating and confusing. Part of that is with the death of the parent, the homeostasis, or it may be an unhealthy balance, but the balance that the families had all these years with everyone in their roles and the family chugging along, that changes, and changes drastically and sometimes suddenly with the death of a parent, especially if the parent was very influential in the family. So everyone's kind of spinning out, and what can happen, like a tornado, all the siblings kind of start spinning together like a tornado, and comes your way right at the funeral and knocks you down. It is really something to behold. As a clinician hearing about these events, it's heartbreaking, angering also, because I have a client who's suffering from the loss of a parent, or even if they were in no contact, there's unfinished business, there's a sense there'll never be closure, all kinds of feelings are coming up, and they use every ounce of courage they have. If they choose to go to the funeral, I never tell a client what to do in those cases. I encourage them to work with me to kind of sort through what the best decision is for them, short term, long term, and for their nervous system. And some choose to go to the funerals, and it takes so much courage, and then they just get whammed by this force of the sibling tornado. You stole this from mom, or dad never loved you, or I mean, these things are actually said. I have very believable clients and believable people partaking in my research. Many are therapists themselves. It's just no reason for them to lie to me. They just couldn't possibly be that good of an actor or an actress. So this is not atypical. I do warn my clients that these situations can happen, and they need to be prepared for that if they do choose to go to the funeral. These are very high tension situations to begin with in any type of dysfunctional or narcissistic family system. So that's sadly a good example of family mobbing. It can be that overt sometimes. Now here's a little bit more of a covert example of family mobbing. How about if you're on a family text exchange, all the family members are listed in this text group, and you're getting the texts, and then maybe you set a boundary with a sibling or with a parent, something any healthy person would do. And next thing you know, you're not on the text exchange anymore. That's very subtle, very covert. But it's in a sense, a form of family mobbing in that you have been cut out of the group, and it's very passive aggressive. But remember, aggressive's included in the term passive aggressive, and that's why I put it in the family mobbing camp. It still hurts. It's still confusing. It's to some devastating. Now, what are the consequences of family mobbing? Well, I've seen cases where there may be a narcissistic parent or a borderline parent, someone who's mentally, emotionally disturbed or off or not well, and they literally will make camps and, in a sense, force either overtly or covertly their adult children or their children while they're still young to ally with that parent against a particular child. That is also a form of exclusion and family mobbing. And when this happens starting at a young age, how could this not affect your sense of self identity and self esteem, your sense of safety, your sense of belonging, your sense of being able to trust people? Anyone who doesn't think family scapegoating is not a serious issue that can have profound consequences, I really hope they have the ability to watch a video like mine. Family scapegoating abuse deserves and needs the same attention as narcissistic abuse. It's time that we as a society acknowledge the damage that scapegoating causes. It can result, including family mobbing. Family mobbing can result in complex trauma symptoms, betrayal trauma, traumatic invalidation, toxic shame, all the things I write about in my book and in my articles. Family mobbing is a form of systemic bullying. It's a dangerous form of systemic bullying. This is not the first time I've brought up that novel, Lord of the Flies, and what happens, the fate of the poor Piggy character in that book, nicknamed Piggy. He was mobbed to death. Spoiler alert. There's indeed a type of aggression in family mobbing that you know it when you feel it. You may not know what it is or what to call it, but you feel it. And any of you who have been cyberbullied, even if not by family, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're not relating to a lot of this, but you've experienced cyberbullying or you've been canceled on social media, it's a terrible feeling. It's traumatizing. So if you have that as a frame of reference, That's the kind of dynamics we're talking about when we talk about family mobbing. That very aggressive energy, it's relentless. It's like you're being pushed backwards, walking backwards toward the edge of a cliff with 1,000-foot drop off, and you feel completely alone. And it's like vultures descending upon you, or a pack of wolves, hungry wolves rushing after you. It's not something you get over quickly. We know, in part from the work of people like Dr. Heinz Lehman, that the consequences of being mobbed are severe. The consequences of being mobbed by your family can leave you feeling, understandably, alone, isolated, helpless, confused, depressed, anxious, and a whole host of mental and emotional difficulties that you may have to spend much of your life recovering from. Family scapegoating abuse doesn't always include the element of family mobbing, but it often does. So I hope via this video or my article, which you can find on my blog on my website, scapegoatrecovery.com, I hope that you take time to ask yourself, did I experience that kind of aggressive force, even if it was more covert? And is that part of what I am having to grapple with and heal from in regard to my FSA recovery? As I said in a recent video, well, it wasn't so recent, probably a year ago now, but when you're in these types of families that scapegoat and you're the target of it, a lot of times you're feeling like you're on a minefield and you're afraid to step your foot in anywhere because you don't know what's going to explode and blow you up. You also can feel like you're on a battlefield with all guns pointed at you, and it's your family holding the guns, figuratively speaking. People who grew up in healthy families don't know what it's like to feel like you grew up in a battleground. Uh, they, they grew up in probably not a perfect family, but a healthy, functional enough family. But some of us grew up in situations and in circumstances that felt like battlegrounds, unsafe, hostile environments at times. For some of you, perhaps all the time. There's so many things I think that we as survivors go through, and we just normalize it because it's all we know, especially if it was early on in our life that we were encountering these dynamics. It took me many, many years for me to get curious and start to wonder about, for example, in my own life, why I was always hiding in a closet. You might have situations like that as well. It's not normal. That's not what is optimal for children growing up, that they're hiding in closets. The big question is, what are you hiding from? What were you hiding from? I have some guesses as to my situation, which I won't get into, but I have a lot of compassion now for that little girl that I was and what she was doing to survive in that environment that felt hostile at times. I want to talk about something that I feel is critically important, because when I did a search on family mobbing and coping strategies for survivors, I was just curious to see what was being said out there. And you either laugh or you cry, because what was mostly there was, go to family therapy and communicate your feelings and la la la. I mean, it was so not based in reality. And I say this as someone who's literally worked with hundreds and hundreds of families in addiction treatment centers and in my private practice. I understand what's happening with families, dysfunctional families, and the kind of dynamics that they're experiencing and that are affecting and influencing their behaviors. And if you have someone who's scapegoated and experiencing family mobbing dynamics, go into a family therapy session. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out the scapegoated family member will more than likely be mobbed in the family therapy session. So in my article, I did make an important note that I feel this type of advice is dangerous. I feel it can re-traumatize the FSA adult survivor. If for any reason, and you may have a very good reason, you feel you want to do family systems therapy, have your own therapist work with you for quite some time first. Make sure they understand family systems, family scapegoating dynamics. And if you both decide it's a good idea for you to go to a family therapy session, take that therapist with you. You need an ally in that room, and that therapist should consult with the family therapist prior to the session to ensure that you're protected, and measures will be taken immediately to stop any type of mobbing dynamics. What coping strategies are available for you if you experience family mobbing dynamics? Well, that is a case where you are probably, until you can really figure out how to protect yourself, you need to limit or temporarily end contact. If it's chronic, persistent, consistent, you may have to face the fact your ending contact may have to be more than temporary. There's a point where you have a sacred obligation to protect your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health. And here's something else I think needs to be addressed when we talk about family scapegoating and family mobbing behaviors. I get asked at times, does this mean my family hates me if they scapegoat me, if they treat me this way? You know, what I find is we take these very, very complex dynamics, and family scapegoating is extraordinarily complex. As I talk about in my book, it can be fueled by intergenerational trauma. It can be fueled by individual psychopathology, mental and emotional uh, illness, personality disorders, etc. It's not to make excuses, it's just a fact. And that's a very insidious process that's difficult to explain. I do spend some time explaining it in my book, Rejected, Shamed, and Blamed. We know from research in the family systems field on the identified patient going back 50 or 60 years that some of these processes are unconscious. But what I see happening often is we reduce these very complex processes into black and white, quote unquote, realities. And that's my long way of answering, does your family hate you? There's so much information out there, good clinical research-based information out there that will help you understand what happened to you in your family. And I hope my book, which is research-based from my own original family systems research, which is also based on my clinical experience working with literally hundreds of dysfunctional families and hundreds of adult survivors of various types of family abuse, including narcissistic abuse and family scapegoating abuse, and my own experience as an adult survivor who's had to work through all the things you've had to work through. We really don't know what's going on in someone's head or heart. Yes, your family may hate you. Alternatively, you could have a tremendous amount of trauma in your family that goes back generations and generations and has been rolling down the hill and affected everyone in the family and affected their mental and emotional health, and resulted in patterns that are recreated, family roles that are recreated and passed down from generation to generation. And next thing you know, you're the next one. But you can also be the one who breaks the chain, who breaks the patterns, who, even if no one in your family can acknowledge or recognize what happened to you, you're working through what happened to you, your efforts to heal from what happened to you may be impacting future generations in ways that you're not aware of. You just don't know. Whether you have children or not, energetically, what your earnest and sincere work to recover, heal, transform, transcend, release that scapegoat narrative, what impact that may be having on others as well as yourself in ways you may never know or understand. This work is important. That's why I'm here, sharing with you what I've learned about family scapegoating abuse. And it is complex. And I, for one, will not reduce it to simple terms and get everyone fired up, believing that everyone in their family hates them and every scapegoat needs to end contact with their family. We're doing something different here. We're looking at insidious realities that aren't easy to define, and we're acknowledging the pain. And I hope we can also acknowledge our humanity and not strip others of theirs. I hope via this video, you're now more familiar with what might constitute family mobbing, and you can take action and measures to protect yourself if that's happening to you. A good peer support group where you feel you're able to talk with people about what's happening and get their input, their suggestions, their experience, strength, and hope. If you have a therapist, you'll want to tell them what's going on. Continue to educate yourself so that if you do decide to limit or end contact, you really feel more confident about it. I think that's the thing that's been one of the most helpful things with my book. I hear from readers all the time, it just gave them so much more understanding. It has a name. This is the phenomenon. This is what happens. This is what's been happening to me. I've tried XYZ and ABC and nothing's changed. I feel more confident now about limiting or ending contact. And that's how education can be quite helpful. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.